Horror movies are without a doubt my favorite genre of film. I find enjoyment in almost all of them, even if they are poorly made. They can still usually entertain me. There's something very attractive about horror movies to people passionate about film. Likely because there are many instances of low-budget horror movies making it big. They make me feel like I could make a movie myself one day, and a lot of popular directors got their start in horror. But an interesting phenomenon I've encountered is the idea of comfort horror movies. These can be classified as horror movies that you can put on at any time and enjoy. To some, this may seem like an oxymoron. How could horror movies be comforting? And what kind of sick freak would turn on a horror movie for comfort? Me. So today, I am going to go over my personal favorite comfort horror movies. The first movie on this list is the early 2000s movie Jeepers Creepers. And yes, I know the guy who made this movie is a terrible person, but it's still one of my favorites, so I have to put it on this list. The plot follows two siblings going home from college, taking a back country road, and along their journey they encounter a mysterious entity that starts hunting them. Now, one of the reasons why this movie is so nostalgic for me is because it's one of the first horror movies that I ever actually watched. I remember it being on cable all the time, especially around Halloween, so it just has a special place in my heart. Some might say I only like this movie because of nostalgia, but I think there are some genuinely really good things about this movie. For starters, I think the chemistry between the siblings is pretty realistic, and they become characters that you enjoy following. I think Justin Long actually gives a really good performance considering the material that he was given. As someone from the Midwest, being trapped on a country road that spans for miles would be a nightmare, even if you weren't being hunted by a monster. The reason I would classify this as a comfort horror movie is because the plot is light and the characters are fairly entertaining. The creature design is some of the best I've seen. The Creeper, as he's called, is probably in my top 10 favorite horror movie antagonists. Basically, he takes people's organs and uses them for himself, and this essentially makes him unkillable. He's also not some mindless demon without a personality. He wears a disguise and drives a car. I feel like he's pretty unique as far as horror creatures go, and he's still kind of creepy at times. The scene where he attacks the two cops is borderline iconic, at least in terms of modern horror movies. And I believe that the ending of this movie is pretty much perfect, at least for what it is and what the story is setting up. I think it's really cool, and I love it. So yeah, I think it's a great movie. I know that not everyone likes it, which I understand. It is a very surface level movie. The characters could be perceived as annoying, but I like it well enough, and it's one of my personal favorites, even if it's due to nostalgia. The Conjuring 1 and 2 came out in 2013 and 2016 respectively. They were both directed by James Wan, and of course, both of these movies were the best in the franchise because of their director. And I think James Wan is probably one of the best horror movie directors working today. These are two of my absolute favorite horror movies of all time. I know that they get a lot of flack because they're kind of flashy, they're over the top. They have the typical based on a true story thing, which gets really stretched thin, especially when all the crazy stuff happens, but I really like it for a lot of reasons. And The Conjuring was probably the first movie that I realized was a comfort movie for me. And I've honestly probably rewatched The Conjuring more times than any other horror movie, and borderline more times than a lot of other movies. So basically, the movie very loosely follows Ed and Lorraine Warren and the case that they are solving involving the Perron family, where a supposed ghost of a witch is haunting them. But whatever, I'm not gonna research all the supposed true stuff that happened there, because the movie probably doesn't really care that much either. But basically, a family of like 12 or something. I mean, like, it's a huge family that moves into this house. So they get settled into this new house, and these kids are playing this advanced hide-and-seek game, which is used later for a really good scene. But eventually, after a number of ghost shenanigans go on, they contact the Warrens. And then this is where we enter my favorite part of these movies. I really like these two characters of Ed and Lorraine Warren. I know that the Warrens in real life were supposedly not very good people, but there's really no point in bringing up the real story, even if you believe it actually happened. This movie is still so far removed from the story that there's no point in bringing it up. But I think Ed and Lorraine's family life is really wholesome. It's like an idealistic 70s family that also happens to be demon hunters, and I think that that's really cool. I also just really like Patrick Wilson. I don't know why, but whenever he's in a movie, I get really excited, like Bone Tomahawk or Aquaman. When I saw that he was in those movies, I got hyped, but I don't know why. But I think he's really underrated. So they get to the house and they start investigating. And now we can get into the reason why this is a comfort movie for me. The Warrens, as I stated before, have a very sweet relationship, and they also have a sweet relationship with the family themselves. There's a lot of really wholesome moments that balance out the horror aspects, and I really like the procedural elements of where they are trying to gather evidence to see if the house is really haunted. And throughout all this, there's quite a bit of creepy moments, but the attachment I feel towards the two main characters makes me want to keep watching. And eventually, the wife of the family being haunted, the one who has like 35 kids or something, she ends up becoming possessed, and we get a really good exorcist scene. Probably the best exorcist scene other than the movie The Exorcist, but it's a really intense and well done scene, and it actually ends with the wife fighting the demon by remembering a good memory she had with her family, and she expels the demon with the help of the Warrens. So obviously all the horror stuff isn't necessarily wholesome, but the way they end up defeating the evil, I would say, is wholesome. But this movie does get intense at times, but honestly it does have a happy ending, and not a single person dies in the entire movie. A lot of people say that this movie is really scary, and I agree that it is pretty creepy, but nobody actually dies. So it's not like I'm just sitting there munching on popcorn, slapping my knee, having a good old time while people are getting ripped in half. No. Yeah, nobody dies. And I think that's kind of interesting. And I don't think anyone dies in the second movie either, which we will get into now. The second Conjuring movie is a comfort movie for pretty much the exact same reasons. It follows a lot of the same beats from the first movie. It has a nice family dynamic, and there's a really cute moment where Ed Warren sings an Elvis song to cheer up the family. The only reason this is less of a comfort movie for me is because I think it's actually a little bit creepier. I still find The Nun really creepy despite those two terrible, god-awful movies. But I think that the demon nun or whatever is probably one of the best horror entities in at least the last 15 years, maybe 10 years, but I think it's a really cool design and a really scary concept, especially for someone like me who's a Christian. And it's just a shame that it gets wasted because of those two movies, but it's utilized really well in this one. But once again, nobody dies. Nobody dies in this movie, so while I do think this one is scarier, it still has a lot of really cute and wholesome moments to balance it all out. And that's pretty much the reason why both of these movies I would consider comfort movies for me, and they're pretty much on the same level in terms of quality and how much comfort I find in them. And it is really mainly just the character moments, and a lot of it just not being people suffering for like the entire movie. They usually do end up having happy endings, even if what happens throughout the movie is not necessarily good. The next movie I want to talk about is Christine. And man, y'all are sleeping on Christine. When I watched this for the first time, maybe a couple years ago, it blew me away. I genuinely love this movie, and it has become one of my all-time favorite horror movies. I think that way more people should watch this movie. It has a lot of great visuals that you only get with top tier John Carpenter movies. And for those that somehow don't know, John Carpenter directed the original Halloween, and he made, unironically, the best horror movie of all time, The Thing. So Christine follows Arnie. He's an unpopular high school kid who gains confidence in himself through a vintage car that he repairs. Over time, his darker side begins to take over, and throughout the course of the movie, you find out that the car is sentient and is sort of manipulating Arnie into exacting revenge on those who have wronged him. And it's such a blast. All of the characters feel very believable. Arnie isn't like a stereotypical unpopular kid. The way that he gets mistreated is very realistic. He is the target of bullying, but not by the whole school like Peter Parker is in Spider-Man, where literally everybody was a jerk to him. He is even friends with a popular football player, and it's actually his best friend. It's actually a fairly realistic depiction of high school, I felt. Watching Arnie turn into like a very normal but somewhat dopey kid turn into an intimidating threat was very fun to watch. The way that they utilize the car for the kills in this movie is very suspenseful and has some of the best visual moments I've seen in any horror movie, to be honest. The score that accompanies all of these amazing visuals is also amazing, but you kind of expect that with a John Carpenter movie because he does most of his own music. The scene where the car runs down the main bully while it's on fire is just amazing. And Arnie becomes a very tragic character, but his journey is just very interesting to see unfold. And the main reason I would classify this as a comfort movie is because I find all the characters really entertaining, and I just love the vibe of the whole experience. It has very nice visuals, a light plot, an amazing score, and it's really not that disturbing and not scary at all. Like, this is basically just a rated R Goosebumps episode. Yes, people do die in it, but it's not too gruesome. So you don't really feel that unnerved by the deaths, and they are so well done, especially in the cinematography department, that they quickly became iconic scenes for me personally. So yeah, I would 100% recommend this movie. You guys gotta watch it on like a cool October night with all the lights off, and it'll be a great time. For my next movie, I want to talk about what I believe is the oldest movie on this list, but I could be wrong. And that's going to be A Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, everyone knows about this movie. It's a horror classic, iconic villain. But I didn't see it until just a few years back, and I'm talking about the original, the first one. And you probably already know the premise, but to give you a brief rundown, just in case you haven't seen it or haven't seen it in a while, the film follows Nancy, a high school girl whose friend was just mysteriously murdered. While everyone tries to pin it on her friend's boyfriend, Nancy suspects that a supernatural force may have committed the act. And this supernatural force is a being that can travel into people's dreams and hurt them and even kill them in the real world. Now, there's a lot that could be said about this movie. I wouldn't exactly say that it is a great movie per se. The acting is pretty rough.
It's just as simple as that.
And the Oscar goes to...
And the plot itself is really simplistic, even if the concept is very unique. It's not super interesting visually, but there are some pretty iconic shots sprinkled throughout. But the concept and the villain is what really makes this stand out. Freddy Krueger is iconic for a reason. He kills people in very interesting ways and is overall just entertaining to watch, especially in the sequels. I could have probably included the third one on here. The main reason that this is a comfort movie for me is because of the premise itself. It's very fun to see all the creative things they do with a character like Freddy. Like I said, the plot is also very simple, so you don't really have to focus on it too much. Overall, I just find it to be a relaxing movie, even if it's not the best. And yes, I do understand that there are disturbing things that happen in it, and it's probably the most violent movie in this list. Maybe second, but we haven't gotten to that other movie yet. But, like I said, it's kind of hard to take it all super seriously and kind of hard for it to disturb me personally because A lot of it is kind of silly, especially the acting. I still really enjoy it, mainly because of the premise and because of the main villain. Now, this next movie is probably one of my favorite horror movies of the 2010s. When I watched it, I was shocked by how much I liked it, and I know a lot of people didn't love it that much, but I personally did, and that's going to be Doctor Sleep. Now, this movie picks up about 25 years after the events of The Shining, and it follows Danny Torrance as he struggles with alcoholism, similar to his father, and he tries to reconcile everything that happened in his past. While all this is happening, these entities that are kind of like vampires, who feed off of people who have the same ability that Danny Torrance has, The Shining, they are abducting people and killing them, and a young girl named Abra befriends Danny Torrance after she discovers that she has the same abilities. But these entities, who call themselves the True Knot, start hunting both of them down. Danny Torrance is played by Ewan McGregor, who is one of my absolute favorite actors. I think he consistently gives great performances in everything that he does, and this is probably the best performance I've seen from him. I love movies that take you on a long, sprawling journey, and this movie just does that. We follow Danny as he overcomes his childhood trauma and alcoholism, taking various part-time jobs throughout. I like that they show Danny as a very flawed character. I think it makes it realistic given what happened to him. And a really cool thing about this movie is that we spend a lot of time following the villains, almost just as much as we follow the protagonists. The movie does a really great job at making us hate these vampire things, but also it makes us understand that they have to do what they do in order to survive. It makes them really stand out in my mind as fleshed out horror villains, which I don't think we get that much in movies, especially horror movies, I mean. This movie was directed by Mike Flanagan, and he's one of my favorite directors working today. He made Haunting of Hill House and Midnight Mass, which is probably the best Netflix show of all time. If you haven't seen that show, you need to watch it. It's amazing. He also made Gerald's Game and Hush, which are also two very good horror movies. Abra and Danny have a really cute relationship, and you grow to really like both of these characters as they try to survive and outsmart these ancient beings. Now, when the movie first came out, it got a lot of flack at the time for having too much quote-unquote fan service, which I think is a really unfair criticism. Yeah, they go to the Overlook Hotel at the end, but it actually serves an important part of the story. There are like a couple of quick references that I could have done without, but people acted like this movie was just a bunch of nostalgia, like a Marvel movie or something, but it really wasn't. Dick Hallorann shows up in some of the best scenes, but you can't really call that fan service. It would be like saying The Empire Strikes Back has a lot of fan service because Darth Vader shows up. Like, it's a sequel to a movie, so it has to have some callbacks, and I think most of the callbacks were justified and had a purpose. I really do want to make a video on this movie someday, because I really do love it. I would classify this movie as a comfort movie because the characters are really likable, the journey you get to go on is very enthralling, and it's extremely visually pleasing. It's also just a really good movie all around, so maybe this is less of a comfort movie and just a movie that I can just watch at any time, which I guess depending on your definition is a comfort movie, but it's just a really good movie. I can't really say much else about it, but I do really want to make a video about it someday. So please watch this movie. It's very good. Like all these movies, watch them around Halloween. So those are some of my favorite comfort horror movies. I could honestly probably make a sequel to this video someday, but I would recommend definitely watching all of these movies around the October time. I guess I decided to make this video now because it was an idea that I kind of saw floating around online, and sometimes when I tell my friends, like, hey, I watched some of these horror movies for comfort, they question me about why would you watch a horror movie for comfort? And, you know, maybe this kind of explains it a little. And I do want to break down some of these movies, especially Doctor Sleep, into more detail one day. So, yeah. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.